It is more common than you think. Actresses go to auditions every day with their flaws and all. It is a scary world, especially if you have a stutter. That is why you should search for and follow and subscribe to my friend's podcast, My Stuttering Life. He helps you to realize you are not alone. It's okay to go out in the world doing what you want to do, stutter and all. www.mystutteringlife.com. He is where all podcasts are, so look him up wherever you listen to podcasts today. www.mystutteringlife.com, or you can do a Google search, My Stuttering Life. He'll show up right on Apple Podcasts, right there. Check him out today. You are not alone. Welcome all filmmakers. You're in the film world. My name is Thomas Kenyon, video editor, live video specialist. Each week, I bring you an inspiring person or message that helps bring you closer to the film world. Thank you for visiting my link and podcast. Now, lights, camera, action. One of the best things you can do for yourself is to be interviewed, to actually be asked the questions. Now, you've heard me asking the questions towards my guests in previous episodes. This one, I appeared on someone else's podcast, and I was the guest, and I was answering questions, and I got a little vulnerable, but I'm going to leave that in there, but about my speech issues growing up as a kid, growing up on Long Island, New York as a kid, going to speech class and everything. Take a listen to that, and you can see then how it led to somehow, interestingly enough, how I started up doing a podcast and talking to people. Give this a listen. You can also find Pedro at My Stuttering Life podcast. He's doing really well on his show as well. He's on all places you can find podcasts: Apple, iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, Spotify, Anchor. He's everywhere, and he's doing a great job with his podcast on helping people realize if you stutter, you really don't have a problem. You're not alone. Give this a listen, and tell me what you thought in reviews and comments.
This is episode 27, and my featured guest is Thomas Kenyon. Mr. Kenyon is a digital video influencer, and he also has a podcast titled Keeping It Real in the Film World, and he is also a person who stutters. Please welcome Mr. Thomas Kenyon.
Glad to be on here and add to your growing guest count.
Thank you, Mr. Kenyon. So we have a lot of topics to go over, so let's get started. Do you remember when you first began to stutter?
Just like it's not this. I just wanted to make it a little clear that it's not like the stuttering that like. And this is what I'm actually doing now is actually what I'm trying to explain. It's
okay.
More of like my thought process.
Okay.
And a lot of times I struggle to get my thoughts out, and it's all like going up and around my head, and words just struggle coming out, and it's more in like thoughts.
To go over your family history, do you have anyone who stutters in your family?
and I can't think of anyone in the initial like the general term of the stuttering, but I would say I kind of got that genetic from my mom, who I think she has. Well, I know she has the same kind of. Although she didn't have a problem expressing her thoughts a lot all the time, but I know she struggles with this same kind of thing, and I think that's where it came from for to pass it down to me.
Okay. So could you talk about your school experience with regards to your thought processes? Was it more difficult in school or not?
From what I was told, like on the outside, when we have conversations with my dad, and actually recent conversations too, people tend to be afraid of that quieter person who doesn't talk much. So, and looking back on my elementary school days, I was quiet, and people think their thoughts go around that they're afraid of the uncertainty what this quiet kid may bring. So it reflects back on me as kind of a negative, because I didn't talk. I just it was passed on to the other schoolmates that there's not. It's just the fear of the uncertain, and that's where a lot of my struggles socially still came from, and still came, and still mix up my past tenses. That they came from back then, and they still do today, to some extent.
Were you bullied in school because of that, being alone, being isolated?
Thinking of that back then, and knowing what I know now, I think that has a lot to do with it. But at the time, it didn't feel like. Obviously, because of that, it felt like they're just casting me as an outcast. But again, thinking back on that, like, oh, it's probably had something to do with it. Plus, I was an easy mark too.
Oh, like me. A very easy mark. So, with regards to the thought processes, does it pertain to you have the words that you want to say, but they don't come out like they should?
In my head, I have it almost mapped out to what I want to say. There's just in my head, there's some things missing still that as I'm talking or as I'm pausing. I'm in Toastmasters, and when I'm giving, side note, that I'm giving a speech in Toastmasters, they always bring up my pregnant pauses. They tend to be like 30 seconds sometimes.
Yours are 30 seconds. Mine are half an hour. We're in the same boat.
And you're not exaggerating at all? Half an hour?
Well, the words are in my head. I know what I want to say, and then I have a block. Blocks can last quite a long time, and I'm trying to do everything in in my power to get the words out. I have facial tics, and I also mimic hand gestures, like our former President Bill Clinton. His hand gestures, I would do those to help me get the words out. And the other person that I was speaking to, I could feel their uneasiness. I could tell that it was awkward for them, but I kept on keeping on trying to get the word out. And granted, after a long time, and I'm turning red, I may be turning blue because there is no oxygen going in my brain. I sometimes just have to stop and breathe and try all over again. And that is a long process. And by then, the other person has either excused themselves or they are taking a phone call, which I know they're not, but still, it's what they do. And so I just learned that this is what I have, and I just have to work with it as best that I can. Talk about how Toastmasters has helped you.
Oh, where do I begin?
From the beginning.
From the beginning. That's always a good start. Begin at the beginning. August 2013. It started out with a lack of communication skills. Very vague. It was told to me about, I have some communication issue. So looking up all of the stuff, I've found in my searching on the web, communication, how to fix, work around, resolve, communication skills, communication issues. Toastmasters came up. I searched and searched for a club that was close to me, and I joined. First club I was part of, it was a little far, and it kind of it got in the way of getting to work on time because it was a morning meeting at 7:00, and I had to be at work at 8. That time, they was like, "Oh, that's fine. You can show up 30 minutes late." They were okay, but I wasn't okay with doing that, so I had to change clubs. And then being in Spring, Texas at the time, I found a club that met way closer to where I was at night on Wednesdays. And I did a lot more that benefited me with that club when I transferred. So aside from the communication I got, now you're talking building of confidence, getting up. Like they noticed right away I froze. I actually did freeze for like a minute, just not standing up there in front of everyone and just doing nothing for a minute, because not that I was necessarily scared to talk. I'm sitting up there searching for the words, and I had a minute pregnant pause.
That's what I do when I'm looking for words. You can visibly see me as my eyes are looking up. I'm trying to find a much easier word to substitute for the word that I am unable to say. So I completely understand. So with Toastmasters, do you speak once a week or once a month, or how does that work?
On average, I usually go once a month whenever I can find a time for my next project, and then when I can fit in on the schedule. Usually easier to fit in on the schedule.
Do they give you a topic, or do you pick your own topic?
Well, on the speeches, you can choose your own topic, but everyone actually gets to partake in at the end of the meeting or beginning. What depends on what club you're in. Either before or after, like before the speeches or after the speeches, the prepared speeches. There's something called table topics as well, where you are given a topic to talk on for a minute.
Okay.
And that's supposed to mirror what it's like to be on an interview and ask questions and talk about it and for a whole minute. If you want to talk about something else, how do you acknowledge that question but still transfer over into what you wanted to talk about, and then going back to the question asked? And that's a whole skill in itself.
Right. So how large are these Toastmaster group meetings?
How large are these meetings? As far as membership?
Yes. Like, are there 20 people in a room? Are there 50 people in a room when you are giving your monthly speech?
Well, like, as far as membership goes, on average, a club has 20 people that are joined, but probably more 10 to 15 people that actually show up each week.
Okay. And how has being in Toastmasters helped you? Because I was never approached regarding Toastmasters because I have always had a fear of speaking in front of groups, albeit small or large, it doesn't matter. And so being in Toastmasters was the furthest thing from my mind. But how did Toastmasters help you cope with your thought process?
The confidence is a big one, and that led to the more I do it, the more I don't even think about. In fact, in a way, I kind of want it now to go up in front of people. Like today, 5 years ago, I wouldn't be saying this, but today, I'd walk up onto a stage with like a concert hall type, and be totally fine with it. I work in the TV production on the back end, but I would say if I was asked to like go on camera, appear on camera for any reason, I wouldn't have a problem with it. I wouldn't ask for it, but I wouldn't have a problem actually going on camera and doing something if they ever asked me to. And a lot of it too was resulting in a year or two ago when I started podcasting. Some of the funnest times I had podcasting myself.
What are the coping techniques that you have learned over the years to help you compensate?
The biggest one that I still continue to learn is connecting with the other person or connecting with the people that you're spreading your message to. If it's one-on-one, it's a little easier, but still a bit of a struggle to connect with a group of people, but it's just finding, you have to find that one to three things that maybe you have in common. It's just about connecting before you actually start sharing your message. It's like building that trust in the conversation.
Right.
I'm still learning that today.
Well, we are all still learning, because with my speech, with my stutter, this is a daily struggle. Although during all my years of speech therapy, my speech therapist taught me some techniques and some coping strategies to help me in in what they call activities of daily living, which basically is going throughout my days. How do I interact with people, and let's say that I have a block. How do I handle that block? Well, one of the best tools that I still use today is diaphragmatic breathing. And that has been tremendous in helping me on a daily basis deal with having to talk on the phone, having to give a presentation, and in some conversations, because it can be a little robotic. When you practice diaphragmatic breathing, you take a deep breath in, and then as you exhale, you are speaking, and your speech is very fluent. See, and that was a little robotic, but as you practice it, you will hopefully lose the robotic nature of that technique. But that has, if I could pick just one technique that has helped me still today, that would be diaphragmatic breathing. So I am very curious. How do you handle your podcast? Because I know that you have a podcast titled "Keeping It Real," REEL, in the film world. How do you cope with having a podcast and having the thought process issue?
So I'm trying to get away from it, but I have a list of questions that I send out to everyone, and I read off there. But I've gotten better in the last two talks. I had actually a good little free flowing one a little bit, but I usually have questions that don't. Having the questions let me not have to think so much and have like dead air. So I have the next question, but my goal, as in every podcaster, every interviewer, is to have free flowing questions that dive from one to the next with 100% continuity.
We all want that. So what have been your challenges with having a podcast?
As I'm starting out, it's the biggest thing is getting the guests.
What's your process for overcoming that obstacle, that challenge?
I became a member of IMDb Pro, as you know, IMDb is the big film movie database, internet movie database. I'm a member of IMDb Pro, where I have publicist contacts, and I need to like start doing this. A list of actors, directors, no matter how big or small, reach out to. I was told by one of my guests, Brooke Lewis, one day, yeah, you're looking for new guests, reach out to someone's publicist and ask them what it would take to have this person on. And so, with IMDb Pro, I have their talent agency, their managers, sometimes them themselves on IMDb Pro. I have their contact. Obviously, the bigger ones, the people with the bigger star meter or smaller. I think it's actually a smaller. The lower the star meter, the bigger they are.
Right.
Sometimes those people, they just have their managers, their publicists. But yeah, I have the contact information to get in touch with those people. It's just about reaching out. You may get someone, you may not. There's tons of people, and it's just that numbers game.
So let's circle back. So have you had ever type of therapy to help you with your thought processes? Like a therapist, anyone that could give you coping strategies?
Going back, and these are times I can actually remember, 5, 6 years old. And what was it? It was like it wasn't kindergarten yet. What was that school? It was like a preschool, I guess. And they got me in there because for the longest time, when beginning of my life, I wouldn't talk. I was doing everything else. I was going up to the answering machine those days back in the late 80s, 90s, and you would hear my sound, my voice at the time, I guess, my sound just making a bunch of sounds on the answering machine, but it's not talking. But I was like fixing the answering machine, the VCR. I was doing all those electronic tech, all the technology, fixing all those issues, but way before I could talk. So they elected to sign me up for speech in this school in New York. So I thought, oh, he's not talking. He has this problem. It was like, and then later on, that speech continued into kindergarten and first grade, and I was just a late talker, like a late bloomer, but a late talker.
Did it help at all? The therapy, speech therapy?
Might have helped with like some formation, and maybe got me talking on the scale. But I think the goal was not about the actual what was going on. Like, I just didn't talk. I don't think there was anything that was really physical stopping me. To this day, I don't like talking if the words aren't going to mean anything.
Right.
One example I always think of when I think of this is like gossip, or I don't like gossiping. I don't like, and sometimes I'm always told that small talk is necessary. But that's how you as I'm learning, that's how you connect with people too. That small talk.
Right. Networking, that's what they call it in my circles, and that will help you to branch out. Let's fast forward. You are a podcaster. Who would you love to interview? Who would be the end all, the be all guest that you would love to have on your podcast?
Two that come to mind. I've always been a big follower of actually these two people. Also, I've watched a lot of what they did. One of them is my age. One of them is way older than me. But I start with the more prominent one. Obviously, the end all guest. I would love to have a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge that he would probably share. Steven Spielberg, the big director, producer. He just would have a lot to share on, and especially for advice for my target audience of young filmmakers just starting out.
Right. You could actually have a 100-part podcast interview with Mr. Spielberg talking about E.T. and that other movie. Let me see. The Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yes. Okay. Yeah. And who would be the other guest?
The other one, he actually appeared in one of his productions. If you're familiar with, I am drawing a blank. I know it. J.J. Abrams directed it. It's actually about filmmaking with an older type of camera movie making, and it's actually in the title, and it's coming to me. It's Super 8.
Super 8. That's a movie?
Yes.
Okay.
Executive produced Steven Spielberg. J.J. Abrams directed it. Joel Courtney, you're familiar with him. David Gallagher makes an appearance in there. He's someone that I've followed for years. I actually wrote him back when I was younger. He's like my age or a year younger than I am. I wrote him, and I want to say at time it was actually from him, but it was one of the only ones I actually got like a letter back from him, and I just came across clean up my room. I'm in Houston right now, in between apartments. I was cleaning up my room. I found this, and it reminded me this would be a good person, because he starred on the hit TV show Seventh Heaven. He stopped there to go to college, to learn filmmaking and producing because he wants to do that. He would be an absolute really good guest for me, being the same age as me. He's been in some movies with John Travolta and Kirstie Alley. Look Who's Talking Now. He's done the movie that started with Angels in the Outfield. He was in Angels in the End Zone, which is about football.
Oh, wow.
One actor that's my age that I've been following through the years as well.
So those two would be your ideal, your dream guests.
Yeah.
My two, I may have a third one, ranked in order. Number one, Bruce Willis. He had a severe stutter growing up, and look at him now. And then number 2, Samuel L. Jackson. Now, he is fascinating because from what I understand, he would substitute curse words for the words that he could not say. So every word, almost every other word was a curse word. So I'm fascinated by that. The third one would be Emily Blunt. Her latest movie is the Mary Poppins movie. So all these actors had, growing up, stutters. What helped me, and this is a direct correlation to what they do, is in junior high and high school. Granted, I did not talk much, and I was mainly by myself. I joined the drama club because I noticed that they were a very cohesive bunch, always having a good time and throwing all these productions and plays and whatnot. And so I wanted to belong, because for a very long time I was isolated. I was just all by myself because no one wanted to hang around the person who was stuttering, stammering, sputtering, hissing, spitting, until I found the drama club. And they opened up their arms and they let me in. And I finally belonged. The people who were in my circle were telling me, "Why did you do that? You stutter. You cannot be in a play. You cannot do well in drama club." Well, let me tell you this. My first play, and so you are the only person that I have told this to. So this is huge for me. The first play that I was in was The Wizard of Oz. And so I was the lion. They gave me my lines, and let me tell you, I spent days and memorized all those lines. When it came to showtime, and this is the most interesting part, because when I was on stage in a lion costume and in the lion makeup, everything, I was not Pedro. I was the lion. And when I was delivering my lines, there was no stutter. And people were like, "What is going on? Who is that person?" Because I know that's not Pedro. But drama helped me to escape from all of the agony, from all of the anxiety, from all of the depression that was a daily struggle for me. So I greatly appreciate what the drama club did for me, and therefore my dream guests, because I would love to talk about with Bruce Willis, Samuel L. Jackson, and Miss Emily Blunt, how being in theater helped them with their stutter. So those are my dream guests.
It's funny about the Samuel Jackson with the cussing.
I
Because like
know.
a lot of people like, oh, why do they use these cuss words? They don't need to. Well, there's a lot of uses for the cuss words, especially it's not just an art form, but there could be many different uses for them, and that's a funny thing about why Samuel Jackson went to the cuss words.
So, talk about your podcast. What platforms are you on?
I have it up on Apple Podcasts and Google Play Music. You can also go to it on my website, thomasmkenyon.com. There's links to it.
Those links I will put in the description of this podcast. Where else can people find you? Like my grandma says, on the interweb. How can people find you on the interweb?
I have my podcast alias, The Real Sweet Tea, at The Real Sweet Tea on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. It's all the same thing, The Real Sweet Tea.
Awesome.
And real W, or real, not W. The Real Sweet Tea, real REEL.
Awesome. Now, do you have any advice for other people that may share your experience of having difficulty with thought processes?
I gotta say, one, just don't be afraid of sharing what you're thinking with someone, because you never know what they're thinking, and what you share just may connect you with either your dream interview, your dream job. Don't let just your inner struggles just stop you from connecting from that one person who's maybe 50 feet from you at the time. Don't let your pausing, stopping, whatever you do, don't let that interfere with going up and just saying, hey, I'm noticing this, I'm doing this, I'm being a little general, but let's connect. I think we can have just a good conversation, coffee, and sit down at a coffee house and talk about that's some of the best things. Like I sat down with this group I joined about a year ago from Inner Circle that I know you're in too, and someone from Dallas. I sat down, I did just that to talk. We sat down and talked at Starbucks for about an hour, and that surprised me that and we had some things to talk about.
How great! Well, Mr. Kenyon, it has been a pleasure speaking with you. I know that we will have many more topics to cover. So I want to thank you for being a guest on this podcast, My Stuttering Life.
Thank you. And I want to just add one more thing too. I don't know if it's advice but in school, I was thinking now, I wish all my schools had this, but they kind of did in a way. Your audio visual, they call them geeks. I'm an audio visual nerd. I'm a video nerd. And by you knowing me, you know this now. But my school never had that AV club that I knew about, maybe because I didn't look for it. But in high school, I came to the drama class, which started me thinking that, hey, I actually like this acting, not so much to actually go into acting, but it's what led me to thinking I like working in communication and media. and it then led me to get my communication degree from Sam Houston State. So drama club did that for me too. So I found something in high school. And I got to say too, I kind of knew where you're going. I was like, he's going to say the line. He was the line. And that was so fitting.
Yes, sir. You are correct. They gave me the lion. I wanted the Tin Man because I knew the moves. I knew the song. So I wanted the Tin Man, but they gave me the lion. But in hindsight, it was befitting.
Line, courage, wouldn't have any other way.
Exactly. Well, Mr. Kenyon, thank you for talking with me today, and we will talk again.
I look forward to it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you listening to my episodes here at Keeping It Real in the Film World with me, Sweet Tea. And I'd also appreciate if you go right now to wherever you listen to this, over on Apple Podcasts or Google Play Music, and review my podcast and give me a rating of 5 stars. This will help me show up in the algorithms for the platforms so that more people like yourselves can hear what my guests have to say. Again, go and give me a review and write a little comment and tell the world what you thought and what you liked about it. And I appreciate everything that you can give me, and for again listening to my show, and I hope you come back next time for another episode.